We are going to begin the funeral service for Mr. J. N. Goldman. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it in silent mode or turn it completely off at this time. I'd also like to welcome everybody via live stream. On behalf of the family, thank you for attending as well. Services will be conducted by Cantor Howard Friedland.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Dayan ha'emet Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach Yishem Adonai mivach. Blessed are you, eternal Lord God, sovereign of all worlds, who is the righteous judge. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be God's name. So good afternoon, welcome, shalom aleichem, peace to all of you. We have come together as family and community to express our sacred sorrow. We have come together to draw strength from one another and from the ultimate source of all strength. We have come together to affirm comfort and blessing in the face of deepest loss, and we have come together to bid farewell to Jay Gold. We share a common prayer that the source of healing sustain those of you who grieve. May those wounded with loss be blessed with love and compassion. We pray that the journey that lies ahead lead from darkness to light. As it is written, thus says the source of hope, I will respond to your yearning. When you call out to me in the night, I will answer. I will be with you even in the darkest of places. I will give you strength. I will nourish you, and you shall know protection beneath the shelter of my wings. And we extend condolences to the family, to Jay's longtime partner, Barbara, to his son, Dr. Flair Goldman. He was a father figure to Dr. Michael, to Jordan, to Adrian, to Rachel, to Dr. David, Earl, and many, many, many others. There are grandchildren, great-grandchildren. To all of you, I wish you love and strength in the weeks, months to come. And to all of you who may be here, whether you were related by blood to Jay or not, lost a dear friend, a mentor, and my condolences to all of you. The 23rd Psalm. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, minot dashe yarbitzeni, Alme menuchot, yenachaleni. Nafshi yishovev, yancheni v'mag letzedek. Yanecheni v'mag letzedek leman shemo. Gam ki helech begetz al mavet lo hirara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yinachamuni. Taroch lifanai shulchan neged tzorerai. Dishan tov Hashem en roshi, kosi rivayah. Ach tov v'chesed, ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני ראוי לא אחסר, אדוני ראוי לא אחסר. And let's read together the translation of the 23rd Psalm found in your pamphlets inside cover. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 121, Nesa enai el harim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim ba'aretz. My eyes look into the void. From where will my help come? My help comes from my very source, the fashioner of order and of harmony. Your guardian will catch you when you slip. Your shelter will protect you while you sleep. Your night will not last forever, for your protector will surely bring back the sun in the morning. Your source will watch over you at all times. And as you came into this world, swaddled in loving embrace, so shall you leave. From Kohelet, the book of Ecclesiastes. דור הולך ודור בא, והארץ לעולם עומדת. ויזרח השמש ובשמש, ואל מקומו שואף, זורח הוא שם. הולך אל דרום, וסובב אל צפון. סובב, סובב הולך הרוח, וסביבותיו שב הרוח. כל הנחלים הולכים אל הים, והים איננו מלא אל מקום שהנחלים הולכים שם, הם שבים ללכת. A generation goes, a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets and glides back to where it rises again. Southward blowing, turning northward, ever turning, blows the wind. On its rounds, the wind returns. All streams flow into the sea, but the sea is never full. To the place from which they flow, there they flow back again. And finally, this from Rabbi Alvin Fine. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness and back, we pray, to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage. The Torah is the sacred book of the Jewish people. No matter what kind of Judaism someone practices, we all read the same words of the Torah. We were told by tradition neither to add nor to subtract from it. And so far, no one has. Interestingly, it is some parts history, we think, some parts myth, some parts taken from other cultures that existed with us at the same time that those parts were written. Some parts may have been true, some parts may not have, but it is our story, and it's sacred to us because of that. And everyone, I believe, who lives writes their own Torah scroll. And from the best characters in the Torah, we learn how to live a meritorious life. And from the worst characters in Torah, we learn how not to live. And often, of course, it's no surprise that those traits are found in the same person, one singular person. People who have very good traits and people who have traits we would not want, because that's all of us. We're human. And we're here trying to answer the universal questions. How did we get here? What do we do here? While we're here, what's our plan? What do we leave to those who succeed us, and where do we go once we leave here? And some of those questions we can answer and some we cannot. But that Torah, that teaching, gives us a foundation. And so it is that I think when someone dies, it's altogether fitting and proper to come and pay respects. But I always feel that we should leave this room changed somehow than before we came in, and changed by knowing about the life of the person we came to honor. Jay Goldman's was certainly very, very interesting life. I don't hear about lives like his so often. And all of you knew him, of course, and you know what I'm talking about. So to tell Jay's Torah, today we have many people who knew him very, very well. So we will start with Jay's grandson, Michael. Or Flair, would you like to go first? We'll start with Jay's son, Flair.
Well, I have some prepared. Since we got off to an inauspicious start, I need them. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I'm Flair Goldman. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jay's adopted son. All of us here cared for Jay, and we all know a lot about him. We know that he touched many people's lives. And it's interesting that in Hebrew, the name Jay means substitute. Jay married my mom when I was 8 years old, and shortly after he adopted me. Family life started, and Jay introduced me to his interests, things like Cub Scouts, fishing, and tennis. And those, by the way, are interests I've introduced to my son's life. He helped me with my homework. He worked to provide material support for the family, which, of course, impacted my life greatly. He spent gazillions of hours doing home improvements just to make our lives better. And just a couple of them that just popped to mind. One was we had a small house with a small backyard, not a lot of money. He spent an inordinate amount of time digging a huge hole in the backyard to submerge a cheap above-ground Playboy or Doughboy pool that you see, and made it ground level, and then built this big cement pad around it, you know, so we could spend the summer in Baltimore, which gets pretty hot, as you guys know, and, you know, having a good time as a family. He took our basement, which was totally unfinished, and spent a winter just killing himself, really, to make it a beautiful place for me to hang out and for our family to hang out. I remember going out into the woods with him and digging up 12-foot tall maple saplings in autumn because we needed shade trees and we didn't really have any money to go buy them. It was pretty impressive to see, you know, for me, as an 8 or 10-year-old or whatever, to go dig up 12-foot trees and move them and have them live there 20 years and have them grow up. So that was all pretty impressive to me. I remember a lot of those types of things, but I won't bore you. It was really, though, as I got older, that I really started appreciating him more. You know, he shared with me his knowledge about writing and involved me in multiple different revisions of in the process of just writing one good paper. And I kind of hated that. You know, I really rebelled against having to, you know, write a perfect paper and then have them pick it apart and say, no, you can do it better, and this line should be up here, and this should be here, and it should flow like this and that. And I resisted it, and I hated it, but ultimately he prevailed, and he taught me how to do it properly, and, you know, I was taught to accept the proper way. But it was really when I got married, and I had my own children, and got a little wiser, that I fully came to recognize and appreciate all that Jay did for me. He didn't lecture me. He taught me through life. He demonstrated patience, persistence, organization, tolerance. He shared with me his love for learning and knowledge, and of course, as we all know, his sense of humor. And at this point, in honor of Jay, I'm going to tell a joke, because as you know, anybody who loved Jay and knows Jay lived for jokes. I can't tell a joke as good as him, so bear with me. So Abe is at the doctor's, and he's leaving the office, and he says, Doc, I know you're going to see my wife tomorrow, and I tell you what, she's got a hearing problem, but she will not accept it. Will you deal with it for me? Tell her she's got a hearing problem. Help me out. And the doc says, sure. He says, I just want you to run a quick test when you go home and report back. He says, okay, what do I do? He says, when you go home, you go up behind her and say something. And if she doesn't hear you, get closer and say something. And let me know finally when she hears you. He goes, okay, doc. So he goes home. She's at the kitchen. He's at the kitchen door. She's at the sink. He says, what's for dinner? Nothing. He gets halfway to the sink. What's for dinner? Nothing. He gets right behind her. What's for dinner? Nothing. He gets right in her face. He says, what's for dinner? She says, chicken. I've told you 3 times. Well, anyway. The older folks who are married will understand. That's for you, Dad. Anyway, the activities that Jay introduced me to and the skills that I learned from him have really served me well in life. And I appreciate him never, ever being overly judgmental of all the mistakes I made in learning those lessons. In closing, I just want to say, Dad, I appreciate you, and I love you.
Thank you, Flair. Now we'll hear from Michael.
Hi. I'm Michael. He was Papa J to the grandchildren, PJ and Peach to me, because I shorten things sometimes. First, though, I'd like to read something from Aunt Adrienne, who is in Nice, France. He was married to my grandmother, Adie and Rick, and Joe and Marla's mother for quite a long time. And that's how we were blessed to know him and to know Flair. Adie wrote, PJ, Jay was a wonderful man. He was a loving husband to my mother and a fabulous grandfather to my children. My children, Bree and Brian, are very saddened by his passing, and both said they will always remember how much they laughed as children when he used his Donald Duck voice. That was typical for PJ. I personally could not have asked for a better stepfather. We all truly loved him. He will be missed. My husband, Dr. David Weisenberger, has been very fond of Jay ever since they met over 12 years ago, and he enjoyed the conversations and times we spent together. Dave and I feel privileged to make a donation in Jay's name to his beloved senior center. So that was from Aunt Dady. Flair, everything you said, I echo it. He and all of my grandparents, Nani was our grandmother that he was with. They took in troubled, stubborn, arrogant at times, 14-year-old. I left home, and my grandparents, they never said anything except for, you have a home here. Actually, my aunt and uncle sitting here offered to let me live with them also at one time. Kate was a newborn, and there's just the love in the family. And when you think about PJ, there's a saying I've always used: blood may make you related, but it's love and loyalty that makes us family. And PJ couldn't have any of his own biological children, but he did have children. He did. Every time I talked to him, I knew what was going on with Flair and with David. I knew when David was frustrated having to go back to Detroit for his residency, I think it was. But they say on your tombstone, I don't know the whole poem, but you have the years. You were born in the year you pass, and in the middle is the dash. And then the dash is really your life. What do you make out of that dash? And he made a lot out of that dash. He and Nani, Janice, Levin, Siegel, Goldman, I don't remember all the names. They were alive together. They were alive together. And I remember when I had to say goodbye to Nani, who was a mother to me, she pulled me really close before she'd let me go. And she made me make a promise, and that was that PJ would never be alone. She said, he needs to meet somebody. He can't be alone. He needs to meet somebody. And sure enough, he was blessed, and we were all blessed that he met Barbara. And they had 12 or so great years together. And then with Earl and Elise, the love he had for all of you, for your children. Not one conversation went by where I didn't hear about each of you and what your children were doing, where they were going to school, internships, fellowships, everything. Music, when the girls were playing in high school. His jokes, he was well known for those jokes, his Irish jokes, and he could always do that accent. I cannot pour a bottle of anything without hearing my grandfather make that, whatever that noise is that a water or in my case tequila might make into a drink. His Elvis impersonations at my 30th birthday, at the senior center, he was known for all of that. He had, I don't know how many of us there are, cousins in our generation. So he had 20 plus grandchildren, then even more great-grandchildren, and now he has a great-great-grandson. My sister had a grandchild, Gabby, and I know they're watching, or I believe they're watching. I believe Aunt Dady is watching. But before I get too emotional, I'm just gonna thank you all for being here. Those who knew me know what my grandparents meant to me, know what my Papa Jay meant to me. Blessed that we were with him at his final moment, my wife Holly and I. And one of the things he was afraid of was dying alone, and he didn't. He didn't. He was surrounded by love, first of all, by everybody here and around the world that had the pleasure of knowing him, and he was not alone. We were holding his hand, and we were with him. So I'll forever take that with me for the rest of my life and hold on to that comfort. And we sat, my dear friend Matt back there, sat with me until they came and picked him up to bring him here. And those are memories that I'll always have. So anyway, thank you. I love you, PJ, and I miss you a lot already. and I'm sure you're telling jokes wherever you are right now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next, we'll hear from Nancy Siegel, who is married to Rick, Jay's stepson.
Hi. As he said, I'm married to Rick Siegel, who was Jan and Jay's son. I first met Jay in 1981 when my daughter Erin, who's up here next to Jordan, raise your hand, was when she was a baby. She wasn't even quite 1 year old yet when we met Jay. And I'll quickly tell a story from back then, which is when Jay and Jan got married. Erin was 18 months old, and my sister-in-law Adrian's daughter Bree was 7. And I made matching dresses for Erin and Bree, and they walked down the aisle at the wedding of Jay and Jan. Erin, being 18 months old, was carrying a little basket with Cheerios and raisins in case she acted up, but she didn't. She did really well. I'm going to skip ahead to just in the last 2 years. I visited Jay several times when he was at Glen, at the nursing home. He called me one day in a tizzy, and he said, "Nancy, you have to come because I won a stuffed animal at bingo for my 2-year-old now granddaughter, Maeve. You have to come and get this bear. It's a gigantic bear." And I said, "You play bingo?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I hear it's really cutthroat." He said, "Oh, no, it's very not, it's very easy." So I go and I get this bear, which was indeed the same size as Maeve at the time. And he said, "Another woman thought she called bingo first, but I told her I called bingo first, and I got the bear." So I thought, okay, so much for cutthroat. And then every time he accumulated extra stuffed animals, he would call me. I'd say, "You got to come. I've got like 6 or 12 to bring." And my son, Mark, who's Maeve's father, said, "Mom, we don't need any more stuffed animals." And I said, "I know." So I have a whole plethora of stuffed animals at my house that were Jay's, that someday they may go to someone, not sure, but I was his pipeline for the stuffed animals. During our visits too, Jay would regale me with stories about his life. Some were related here. And he had quite the dash in his life. One of the stories he told, he said, "I was in a play in high school, and there was a girl from the high school in the next town. We didn't have big enough schools to have our own play, so we were together. And I played opposite Cloris Leachman." And I went, "Cloris Leachman, really?" And he said, "Yeah, she was a little older than I was." And I went, "Huh." So then I went home and I Googled Cloris Leachman, and Wikipedia did not mention her high school play opposite Jay, but she had indeed grown up in the town next to his and was a little bit older. So I think all of his stories were probably true. He had a long life. He was blessed with a long life, and he certainly lived his life rich and wealthy with friends and experiences and people who he'd been around and took things from and gave things to, which made him that much more of an interesting guy. So I will miss, I'm not going to miss having more stuffed animals in my house, but I will certainly miss our visits and will miss his sense of humor. I'm not sure I'll miss his Donald Duck voice, but anyway, I love you. I am privileged to have known you, Jay, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And next, we'll hear from Jay's friend, Ken Ditkowski.
I knew Jay in his latter years. I didn't know a lot of these things that you mentioned, but I do know that during his lifetime, he was known for 3 things: honor, honesty, and integrity. And that's That was his major hallmark across the board. He did a lot of blessings for people. And when it comes down to a quick summary, Jay had the ability to disagree with you without being disagreeable, which is something that's lost today and something that we're going to miss. And I'm going to miss him in particular because he's a good friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. And finally, we'll hear from Earl, Barbara's son.
Well, I was going to read something that his friend Ron wrote in memoriam, but Ron is here, so as a bonus, we'll ask him to come up. But first, let me just say, Jay and my mom came together about 12 years ago, not long after the passing of his wife of 34 years, Jan. And together they were partners, and they traveled the world, and they drove places where he probably shouldn't have been driving. They bought things they didn't really need. They watched MSNBC religiously. And Wheel of Fortune, of course. Basically, they lived life to the fullest, and he was an example to me of just that. When I went through a tough time about 10 or so years ago, he just showed me, you just keep living, just keep going, and things will turn around. And they did for him at different times in his life, and they did for me too. When I went to see him on Thursday night, he said, "I love you." He would say, "I love you" to everybody, and you'd love him back. He made friends with everybody. Everybody he met, he was their friend. One of the last things he said was, my wife Minu wasn't feeling well a few weeks prior, and he said, "How's Minu? Send her my love." And I told him I love him, and that was the last I saw of him. But he was such an inspiration to me and to everyone he knew. And rest in peace. Thank you. Oh, Ron. Is he here? Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ron Montaigne. I'm a member of the North Shore Senior Center. I wasn't prepared to give remarks today, but God works in mysterious ways. I wrote something in the guest book yesterday. It took me 5 minutes to write because when I heard Jay had passed, the words just came. But, God works in mysterious ways. I'm going to read it Tuesday at the North Shore Senior Center in front of the Tuesday Club. And I wrote the directions to get here on the bottom of my notes. And I had this, because I'm too cheap to have a cruise control or whatever they call that thing on your car that gets you there. So I knew I had to take Edens to 370B and then get off Niles Center, go to Greenwood and turn, and then I saw it. And I said, I found the place. But I am not here as Ron Montaigne. I'm here for, I want to say hundreds of people, but I really have to say thousands of people. Because Jay touched hundreds of us, but through us, we touched thousands of people. And I'm amazed, I'm totally amazed that Jay had a life here with you people that are here and those that might be watching, and I'm sure there are many through the North Shore Senior Center that are watching. How could he have a life and do all that he did with the North Shore Senior Center? So let me read this before I get too into it. But you need to know, I'm not here as Ron Montaigne. I'm here as one of many North Shore Senior Center individuals. I have the honor of representing them in what I'm going to say. Jay Goldman was more than a leader and a fellow volunteer within the North Shore Senior Center. He was an institution. Jay was one of the first persons I met when I was dragged into the North Shore Senior Center after Montgomery Ward went out of business and I became a rather young retiree. I was reluctant to see myself as old. Jay was programs chair, and I met him at a dais like this because he was leading the program at the center. But the program, the center, the staff, the volunteers, and the attendees were all so wonderful. They were bright, energetic, and not old in any sense. Jay helped open my eyes to what active, aware, fully engaged seniors could do with each other and for their community. Jay made a difference. I have to repeat that. Jay made a difference in whatever he did. Over the years, there was no one who exceeded his commitment to making a difference. We were known as the men's club then, and then we realized that there is other people in the world. And we are the Tuesday Club now because our members are both men and women. Jay never stopped making a difference. What comes to mind and what allowed me to write this in just a few minutes was his leadership in being president for at least 2 years, membership chair, programs chair for way more than a dozen years. He initiated our hot dog days. He said this would be a good idea to do, and it became expanded into pizza days too, where we offered that to the people that came. He led our jazz group. He was charter member of our Gone Fishing group. And then I was reminded by, I think, you about the joke with respect that he led Laugh-In, where he would just have an hour or two of people getting together and let's just enjoy each other and laugh a little bit. And he was into sports talk. There wasn't anything that Jay wasn't totally involved in. Jay had the idea, well, he organized first of all, he organized special events that focused on different countries, Italy, Germany. He even got involved with the consulates here in Chicagoland. And he would have buddies that would come here, and they were now, you'd see them in North Shore Senior Center talking to Jay. The next day, they would be on television being interviewed. So Jay was quite, I'm not Jewish, but he was a definite macher. I think I've said that right. Okay. He was definitely that. And a mensch. Well, let me get back to the script here that I didn't think was going to be a script. He came up with the idea of setting up a fund to invite and give a stipend to talented Northwestern music graduate students and offer free concerts to the community. I'm sure I'm missing other leadership roles that he's done, but he had the energy. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing this one man that took this on. One guy, not a committee, not a group of 20 different people. This is one guy who took this on. He had the energy and enthusiasm of 3. I remember Jay telling me, and this is the truth, you know, Ron, I might miss your meeting. You know, I had a membership meeting. And he says, it's in a couple, 3 weeks. I might miss it. I'm having a triple bypass. I said, well, I think, you know, that takes the priority. But he attended the meeting. He came. He was well enough. So, I mean, 96 years. All right. When he went into a nursing home, he helped organize the events there. So you get the idea. I have to stop now. But Jay Goldman was one hell of a special human being. A true celebration of a life well lived for all who had the special honor of knowing him. And again, I'm just one of the many hundreds that are represented here. What a role model at any age. God bless. Thank you for asking. Let me do that.
Thank you, Ron. That was a wonderful tribute. And thank you, Earl. And thank you all who spoke and gave us a glimpse of Jay's life. So, Jay Goldman was born August the 14th, 1927, in Parkersburg, Iowa. He was the only child of two wonderful parents who were always very proud of him. And I think it's always a very, more than any other advantage in life, whether it's money or an education, when you have two parents who love you, that's a big, big boost, and it stays with you forever and carries you on. Jay was not the biggest guy on the gridiron, but he played center on the high school football team. He was also a Boy Scout. And this is really interesting. He joined the Army after he graduated from high school. And he was on a maneuver. He stayed stateside because everything was over. It was World War II overseas, but he stayed stateside, and he was on a maneuver. And during those maneuvers, there was a young man, another infantryman, who was with Jay. And the maneuver was they had to hang on to a bridge. And this young man was losing his grip. And he would have fallen, and he would have killed himself, were it not for Jay reaching out his hand and pulling him up. And this young man was a son of a chief of the Sauk tribe. And because of Jay's heroism, he was made a member also of the Sauk Nation. Not many of us can claim to save someone's life, and in such a dramatic way. And when I was listening to it, I almost couldn't believe it. But of course, we know that Jay acted with Cloris Leachman, so of course he saved the young man's life in such a dramatic way. Jay also learned to fly a plane when he was a young man. He was not in the Army. He learned it privately. Once he was discharged from the Army, he became a student at the journalism school at the University of Missouri, and then became a writer for television, for newspaper. He worked at WBAL in Baltimore as director of advertising, and he was also a campaign manager on a political campaign in Montana. He had his own ad agency. He also taught at Baltimore City University. He taught as a graphic artist. He was also taught voiceover production, and he did both of those things well. As was said, he loved people, he loved life. He had a can-do attitude. And this is important. He did what he wanted to do in life. It takes courage to do that, by the way. Many of us want to do something, we say, oh, I don't know. Maybe my parents won't approve. Maybe it won't work out. I don't know. Maybe it's not so stable. Well, Jay had a lot of courage, and he did what he wanted to do. He also played the drums in a jazz band. He had 20 cardboard boxes of jazz 78s in his collection. He was an avid fisherman, and as Ron had said, he was a 30-year volunteer at the North Shore Senior Center, where he programmed speakers. He had a play reading group, a fishing club, a joke club. Jay did home remodeling. He was self-taught and did, as Flair said, really, really good work. He was a cartoonist. He was a collector. He collected pipes. He collected records. He collected scissors. He collected rubber bands. He collected twine, and he collected nuts and bolts, all very organized. Also, he collected clowns, both papier-mâché and porcelain. He taught in Catholic and public schools throughout his career. Was well-traveled, traveled to Iceland, to Holland, to Belgium, to Mexico, to Italy, to Israel, Portugal, Turkey, the Greek islands. He was married, officially married 3 times. His third wife, Janice Siegel Goldman, was a love of his life for 34 years. And then he met, of course, his longtime partner and beloved partner, Barbara, with whom he had 12 great years. He was calm. He was positive. He was encouraging. Except Trump made him angry. You're entitled to something. He always had a drafting table. Wherever he lived, he had his drafting table. And he would always ask, as Earl said, about others, even at the end of his life when he had his own problems. He asked how others were doing, asking about Minu at the end of his life. He had lots of friends, and this was important. He knew how to adapt to life, to adapt to change. Jay always said, I love you. Earl was saying when they never left each other where Jay didn't say, I love you. Jay had pride and self-confidence, but he was not arrogant. He didn't brag about his own accomplishments. He was matter of fact. He was very proud of Barbara's family. DNA wasn't relevant in his life. You were a son, daughter, nephew, niece, grandchild. It didn't matter. And he loved you as fiercely as if you were his very own. He helped others, as was said. He was a mentor to so many people. A great story was that Adrienne who was an acquired daughter, was studying for the bar exam at age 50. She'd gone back to law school, middle of life, and Jay went to be with her for 2 months to help her study for the bar. And she passed, of course. Jay loved watching MSNBC, Rachel Maddow. He loved watching Wheel of Fortune. He did crossword, Sudoku. After his knee surgery, as I asked how he and Jan, his third wife, had gotten together, Jan came from Phoenix to Chicago. So after Jay had knee surgery, he just moved in and he never left. And they got married. Never give up was his attitude in life. He met Barbara at the Oriental Institute of Chicago, down in Hyde Park, where they had their first date. And then they were together ever since. They just had so much, as Barbara said, so many things in common and so many things they liked to do. They read plays. They were both in a book club. And Jay fell in with Barbara's friends. Learned so much from Jay's life, especially hearing all of you who spoke. Sometimes we'll lose someone and people sort of pay their respects just to pay their respects, but it's palpable today that all of you really loved him and lost someone who was an integral part of your life. He did so many things, and I think I take away from Jay's life, and what I'll take away and use is his curiosity to the end and his interest in not only the people he loved and his intimates, but people he acquired along the way. And some of us act on a grand stage that's global and make a huge difference, and some of us act on a local stage, a smaller stage, and make a huge difference. There are ways to make a huge difference. Some people do nothing, and many people go through life and don't do a quarter of the things that Jay did, right? But he affected so many people, and sometimes we don't even realize, and maybe he didn't even realize how many lives, as Ron said, hundreds and by extension, thousands of lives of people who were the recipient of his great gifts. So thank you all. And thank you, Jay. It's said in our tradition that we live on in the memories of the people who are left behind. And I don't think that's just lip service. I think that's true. Because as long as we're alive to tell the stories of Jay's life and the succeeding generations learn those stories, then Jay lives. So farewell and rest in peace, Jay. Rest in peace. I now ask you, as you're able, to please rise for the memorial prayer, Amalei Rachamim. El Mare Rachamim, Shochen Bam Ramim, המצא מנך נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הקיע מזהירים את נשמת יעקב שהלך לעולמו. אנא ברחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of your presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of J.N. Goldman, who is gone unto eternity. God of mercy, bring him under the cover of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and may his repose be peace. And we say, Amen. Please be seated.
This concludes the service here at the chapel. There is no formal Shiva, but Mrs. Levin would welcome anyone who would like to stop by her apartment, and that is at 2601 Chestnut Avenue, Unit 1318 in Glenview. Just swing by, and anytime with a little visit with her, she'd appreciate that. Interment will take place at West Lawn Cemetery, that's 7801 West Montrose Avenue in Norwich. The procession will form in the parking lot. Please keep in mind a few safety features while in the procession. Keep your bright headlights on at all times. We'll attach a orange funeral sticker to the passenger portion of your front windshield. We'll also attach a flag to the roof of your car. And please stay as close as safety permits to the car in front of you if you're going in procession. The following people have been selected to serve as pallbearers. If you'd please come forward when I call your names. Flair Goldman, Michael Bell, Earl Levin, Jordan Brandis, Rick Siegel, Brian Rupsis, and Jacob Levin. This time I'd ask that everyone please rise as the family, Mr. Goldman, and the clergy are escorted from the chapel. Pallbearers, we're going to follow right behind this gentleman here. Who's that, you?